want to thank Marva. We'll also hear from our State University System Chancellor, Ray Rodriguez, who's been in that role for a number of years and is doing a great job. And then finally, we'll hear from former Speaker of the Florida House and now President at New College in Sarasota, Richard Corcoran. So I'm excited to welcome you. And we have our presidents from almost every other university. We had a flight coming from South Florida with Jeanette Nunez from FIU and Adam Hasner from FAU. I guess the plane had some trouble, and so they're not going to be able to make it. But we've got our presidents from Florida Gulf Coast, Central Florida, North Florida, Florida State, University of South Florida. We want to appreciate all that you guys have done. You know, we've got a big football weekend this weekend. It would have been a little bit bigger had Florida State gotten it done in Virginia, but it's still going to be a huge game with Miami being so highly ranked, and then Texas coming to town here in Gainesville should be interesting. So I know a lot of Floridians will be able to enjoy those games, and hopefully we get positive results. Certainly here would be really nice to be able to beat Texas in the swamp. We're here today for a very simple reason. For 10 years in a row, Florida has been ranked #1 in public higher education in the United States of America. And there's a lot that's gone into that, but maybe the thing that I'm most proud of is if you look at what it costs to go to our state universities as a Florida resident, the tuition is exactly the same as it was the day I took office. There's been no increases in tuition for our Florida residents. And we also, and I've been a big supporter of the Bright Future Scholarship Program. So if you're somebody who is a Florida high school student, Florida resident, and you get into the University of Florida, chances are, if you're able to get in here, you qualify for Bright Futures, or you certainly have a chance to if you meet some of the other non-academic criteria. And that gives you 100% tuition or 75% depending on the level that you're doing. So if you're a strong student in Florida, and you end up here in Gainesville, for example, you know, it's very possible that you never have to pay anything for tuition. But even if you do, tuition is manageable such that, you know, you could work a part-time job. You really do not need to take out loans to go to our state universities as Florida residents. And in fact, right now, 77% of undergrads in Florida are loan-free. And that continues to increase year after year. One of the things that I really enjoyed being a part of, and I think we've done it now twice, you know, we've had for many years now the Florida prepaid college program. And so you can start when the baby's born, right? You can pay in, you pay a little bit, and then basically when it comes time for Johnny or Susie to go to college, they're able to just go. The tuition's been paid for. And so it really is a good deal. But you know, what happened was they were doing that, forecasting that there would be modest increases in tuition, right? I mean, and that's probably a safe assumption. Well, because the tuition has remained flat, they've actually refunded our prepaid families with money. So you did prepaid, you're getting a check back, and your kid can still go tuition free. So I was really proud of that. I know that was something that was I think the first one was in like 2021 when you really started to see an inflation nationwide take off, and I think we did another one in the last couple years. But you're talking about a really significant amount of money that's been refunded to parents in prepaid. And I would offer you this to ponder. If a state like New York or Illinois or California was in a situation where they were sitting on that money, do you think that they would refund that to you? No, I don't even think we have to discuss that. So being able to afford a high quality education is really important because we've seen a generation of students that have been saddled across this country with really, really debilitating amount of debt. And I think part of it was cultural. When I was going to school in Florida as a high school kid in the 90s, they were saying, you got to go to college, otherwise, you're just not going to be able to be successful. And like, we're proud of our universities, but we also have apprenticeships, state colleges. There's a lot of ways you can be successful. And so I think what happened was people were told they had to mortgage their future just to get a piece of paper. Well, that piece of paper needs to mean something, right? If the piece of paper is zombie studies and you're in debt, you get out of school, and then you end up in a job you could have had at a high school. That's not the model that we want to do. So we want to offer high quality where we're focused on things that really, really matter, but also in ways that are not going to mortgage people's future. And I think we've done that better than anybody else in the country, and it's something that's really, really important. So making it attainable for people, making them be able to afford it. Families, just think of like across the country, and even at state universities in other states, even the in-state tuition is much, much higher than it is in Florida state universities. But then if they end up trying to go to a private, it's a lot of money. It's like a huge thing for the family to even be contemplating that. Here in Florida, you know what? If you work hard, you're a good student, you get into one of our state universities, you got the pathway. Doesn't matter your income level, doesn't matter in that. You have the pathway, you're going to be able to get it done. We've also done things, I don't think anyone needs me to tell you that, it's been a rocky year, or it's been a rocky few years across the country for higher education. And nowhere was that more evident than in the response to the October 7th, 2023 attacks. What happened on some of those campuses like Columbia University was far beyond just simply people speaking their mind. The campus really became a situation where there weren't rules being followed, there was disorder. Professors and students were being accosted and threatened in ways that, is not living up to the standards that you would want in higher education. But we've also seen for many years a focus on intellectual fads, ideologies, rather than the things, that really, really matter. And I'm proud to say in Florida, we've worked really hard, certainly at the state level, with the policies that we've put out. I know our Board of Governors did something that I think most people thought was sensible, but some of the people didn't like, was saying, we're not going to force you to take sociology, for example. If you want to take it, you can, but why would that be a requirement? But then like American history would not be a requirement. Like, I want to prepare our students to be citizens of this republic. I want them to have a good foundation of what it means to be an American, yet that wasn't required, but somehow sociology was. So we're trying to focus on the things that really matter. A good, solid education really should be timeless in many respects. These are enduring ideas that you're discussing, that you're learning about, and we've really worked hard to be able to do that, and I'm proud of that. One of the things that we did was recognize that, okay, we want to make sure that we are bringing in very bright people to be able to teach students, but that's about really fulfilling the core mission of the university. It's not, some tenured professor just has their own agenda and are doing activism and things like that. Like, if you want to do that, you can do that on your own time. We're not going to underwrite that as the state of Florida, and certainly there are universities that have a different posture than we want our universities to have. Berkeley, some of these others, they have a much different posture, and that's fine. But here we want to focus on what really matters. And so, we instituted reforms on post-tenure review so that tenured professors have to undergo review every 5 years, and they can be terminated for poor performance. And I think that that's important because, the idea of getting tenure is so that you can challenge orthodoxy, express, ideas that may not be, consistent with the herd. During COVID, quite frankly, you saw people like Jay Bhattacharya at Stanford contesting some of the things that were coming out of NIH and Fauci and all that. Honestly, he was right. Very unpopular, particularly in that area. He was tenured, so they couldn't fire him just because he had a different view. But if you are neglecting teaching, neglecting good research, not being productive, there's opportunities for us to bring in some great people, and we've been able to do that. And, the university presidents have more power now to bring in and recruit. We put in hundreds of millions of dollars over the last few years to be able to recruit faculty. And I just look here at the University of Florida at the Hamilton Center. I mean, you're bringing in people from Harvard and Princeton and all these places to come to the Hamilton Center because I think you're offering, I think, a great intellectual environment, but more importantly, you're able to offer them, give them good compensation, and they're in a great spot. So I think that's been really, really important, and I know our university leadership have been using that tool to be able to improve the faculty. We've also made sure that, and I think this thing like we've seen, so we have an institute at Florida International Adam Smith Center, and really it's, I think almost anyone that's ever been a head of state in Latin America that has any type of free market orientation has ended up speaking at the Adam Smith Center since it's been launched. You look here at the University of Florida, the Hamilton Center, as I mentioned, you're bringing in people from places that we would not have thought, 5 or 6 years ago that would have been doable. But I really believe that Hamilton, with what they've already done here, they're on their way to being the premier center for the study of citizenship, civics, and Western civilization in the entire country. And in fact, I was talking to a esteemed professor in Princeton who kind of started the movement with this, Robbie George. Like, everyone's going to Florida now. Like, it's hard to keep people. So that's really, really positive. But I think that those centers, and I know Florida State has one, I know they're working on, and then of course Richard Corcoran New College, I mean, their whole college is really geared around classical liberal arts and making sure that we're preparing people with a foundation to be good citizens. But this is something, I think students, there's so much nonsense that gets spewed out there, social media, different stuff you hear, fads, this. I think people have a hunger for things that are really enduring and really true. And, we're here with studying things like the Western canon. This stuff matters. It stood the test of time. So I think that's why these programs get a lot of interest from the students, because I think they kind of intuitively know, what, this really, really matters. This is something that's really significant. So I want to applaud everybody that's been involved in all of those endeavors. I think it's really, really important to be able to do that. So we have #1 system for higher education. And then that's 10 years in a row. We have a record-breaking 7 institutions in the top 100 public universities throughout the United States of America. And that puts us second overall. Of course, California is almost twice the size of us population, so we're doing really, really well there. But this is something that is, and you see the improvement in year after year with all of these different schools. So University of Florida has been our top-ranked public university for many, many years. It's one of the top, usually ranked 25th, 30th of universities, period, including the private universities. And I think that's only going to get better. And I'll tell you, I've noticed the difference just as governor, my first year as governor. This was 2019. If I'd be talking to people in other regions of the country, their view of kind of education in Florida, it wasn't an accurate view, but their perception about higher ed, whether it's here or others, was probably not as positive as it is now. But you have seen the change. And part of it is some of these other universities have done a lot of bad things, but part of it is people are now being exposed to more and more about the good things that you're doing. And a lot of times people will say, heck, why would I want to put up, with the nonsense that's going on in this university, that you can go to Florida and you're going to do very well. And I will say, all of our universities, when you had all those the disturbances on the campuses, you didn't see that. No one got away with that here. You can say and believe what you want, and you can express views, but when your conduct is outside of acceptable behavior standards. I mean, I remember Richard Corcoran at New College. This was a couple years ago, I think, or maybe last year. They had a commencement, and they had a great speaker, and you had a handful of students who were just screaming and trying to disturb it from everyone, and he disciplined them. I mean, that's really what needs to happen. It's like, you have a right to have your views. If we have a speaker on campus, you don't shout them down. You don't create disturbances so that they have to cancel an event. you have to be willing to have an exchange of ideas, but you have to behave yourself. And I think on some of these university campuses, it's like the inmates run the asylum because no one ever gets held accountable for anything. And in Florida, that was not. I think it was Florida State, and President McCullough can correct me. I think they tried to take over the lawn, and like 10 minutes later, they just turned the sprinklers on, and those guys got off that lawn very quickly. And that's really, and so I think when parents see that in Florida and beyond, and they see, you know what, these are positive environments, and they're not going to devolve into some of the things that we've had. I think that's been good. University of Florida, I remember we came here, and you had all these people, and it's interesting. A lot of the people that were creating most of the problems were not actually even students. It's kind of like, these are kind of like professional agitators that they just come. Well, for heaven's sakes, we definitely can't let them run the institution. And so all the universities here in Florida did a very good job in that, and that was in stark contrast to so many of the others. So University of Florida, helped lead the way on that, and we really appreciate all that they've done. They are #1 public university in the nation for graduating students on time, which I think is also important, right? Of course, when I was, going to high school in the 90s, people that I knew would, go away to college, and they would say, yeah, I may do that. I'm going to do 4.5 years because I want to stick around for another football season because, you had a chance to win another national championship, SEC, whatever. I guess we're focused a little bit more on just getting you out now, which is good. I think I think it's positive. So 4 years and out is really, really positive. And they have the lowest net cost of public universities, and impacting salary performance after graduation is rated by the Wall Street Journal. And, look, the higher ed, we want it to be meaningful. We think that there are certain things that, from like a liberal arts perspective, that just citizens should have, but we also want you to be able to graduate here and apply that in various fields. And so you look, engineering, business, all these other things, that matters. And I think our university has done a really good job on that. University of South Florida, top 50 public university in the United States, up 2 spots from last year. One of the top values in public education, higher education, and then also one of the top 20 most innovative schools in the nation. And they're doing a lot on like cybersecurity. They're doing a lot on environment and some of the projects that we've really put a lot of time and money on in Florida. And they're doing a lot in medical and research. And we were just there last week with the First Lady profiling that. And obviously in a part of the state that's grown very significantly over the last particularly 5 years, but really over many, many years. And hopefully we got new ownership on the Tampa Bay Rays, and hopefully that gets settled in a way that's going to be even better for the community going forward. But I'm happy to thank University of South Florida. I know there still may be some soreness here in Gainesville for the football game between those two, but I'll just let sleeping dogs lie on that. I'm not gonna get into that. Florida Atlantic University made its debut in the top 100 public universities this year. So congratulations. So Adam Hasner was put in as president this year. I think he's doing a great job. I think there's a lot of possibilities for Florida Atlantic University. That being in Boca Raton, that's in a county, Palm Beach County, that is really seeing a lot going on in that county. I think that the amount of wealth that's migrated there over the last 5 or 6 years is really unprecedented. They have an opportunity to capitalize on that and continue to provide even better educational opportunities for their students. And I mentioned Marva Johnson, who you're going to hear from. FAMU is one of our top 100 public universities, and it's rated the #1 public HBCU in the entire United States. Florida International, as I mentioned, the president, Jeanette Nunez, wasn't able to make it because of flight complications, but they are also a top 50 public university, number 48 amongst public universities, and #1 in the nation for upward economic mobility. They've done a great job of giving people, particularly down in Miami-Dade County, great opportunities. I mean, I think it had traditionally been considered more of a commuter school, but that's changing, just like it changed at USF. I mean, USF, when I was a kid, was commuter. And so you have that, and then that's another part of the state that's really, really picking up, and a lot's going on there. So Jeanette has been in now probably for about 6 months and has done a really, really good job. New College of Florida, led by President Richard Corcoran. You know, this is an interesting thing because this is a small liberal arts college in Sarasota. And I must confess, you know, I ran and got elected governor of the state, and I had never heard of it before. And I remember my first year as governor, one of the legislators came to me, and they're like, I want to talk about new college. I'm like, why do we need any new colleges? We've got enough. Like, no, new college. And they started telling me about it. And, you know, it was just an awkward thing because it's like beautiful campus, like right on the water. And so, I mean, just spectacular. But it was in statute supposed to be our top honors college in the state of Florida, but they didn't have grades. It was like beatnik, very, very politicized, all this stuff. The enrollment had shrank, the test scores had gone down. And so, you know, we were in a situation where, okay, what are we going to do? So, you know, we overhauled the board. The board selected Richard to come in and to be the president. And, you know, the thing is like, when it's a smaller school, I think you can make changes more quickly. You know, he's made dramatic changes. And now your enrollment is as high as it's been in a long time, right? Ever. The highest enrollment ever. And the test scores are going up. But new college is like, you know, if you want classical liberal arts, if you want the type of education that like the founders of this country had, where you're really studying great books and all that stuff, the new college is a great thing. And, you know, there's other colleges that try to do that around the country, like Hillsdale up in Michigan. And I know a lot of those guys, and they're good. But I would just say to parents nationwide, would you rather visit your kid in January in Michigan or Sarasota? I'd rather visit Sarasota. So I appreciate everything that he's done. Florida Polytechnic, Devin Stevenson, #1 regional public college in the South for 5 consecutive years. #2 regional college among both public and private universities. #3 best value public schools in the South. And Devin was one of our state college presidents, and he's been there relatively short amount of time and has really helped pick that up, and it's been very, very good. Florida State University, I know we have President McCullough is here. This has been consistently a top 25 public university, up 2 spots from last year. Number 13 public university in the nation for first-year experiences. And really, I think, you know, I just remember when I was growing up, you know, getting into these places was not really considered something that was difficult. It's not easy to get into Florida State or Florida for that matter. I mean, these are much more competitive, and you've got a lot of interest in doing that, and I appreciate everything that's been done. University of Central Florida, number 57 nationwide, up 4 spots from the previous year. I know we have President Cartwright here. That's another interesting opportunity because you're in a part of the state there in Central Florida where there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in medicine. There's a lot going on in things involving defense and aerospace. They've got a great relationship with the Space Coast of Florida, feeding in. In fact, we were at the air show. They do an air show every 1 year in Paris, the next year in England, and they rotate. And governors go. I had never gone before, so this was the first year I had gone. And it's like every single company in the world that's involved in this space is there. It's unbelievable. But, you know, we were working with, you know, one of the defense companies, and they have like a pipeline from UCF, you know, into their operations, and not just limited to the Space Coast. I mean, they'll hire them all over. So that's huge opportunities. Those are really good jobs for that. And I saw one of my staffers, Grace, she came to campus here with her UCF pin on. I told her don't let people see, but there's a lot of opportunities there. And then West Florida, led by Interim President Manny Diaz, #6 for regional public universities in the South, and that's up 4 spots. He's just gotten in within the last few months, but he's made a lot of changes, and I think you're going to see a lot there. So West Florida is out in Pensacola. sometimes doesn't get as much attention as it should, but I think under Manny's leadership, you're going to see more and more. And they have a lot of opportunities, too. I mean, that's one of the best military communities in the United States of America, both for active duty and for veterans, and they have a lot of programs where there's a lot of great common cause there. So all in all, I think we can say job well done to everybody that's been a part of this. There's a lot more that we want to do. I want to continue to see programs like the Hamilton Center flourish. I think it's important. I want to continue to see a focus on things that really, really matter. I mean, I love hearing about the engineers being produced. I love hearing about what they're doing, in some of the other sciences, and business is important. There's a lot of things that are important, really focusing on that and continuing to build great opportunities for our students going forward. So we've got a lot of momentum, but we've got a lot more to do. We've had a lot of support over the years with the Florida legislature providing funding. We had support this year, generally speaking, but I definitely think there's some more that can be done. I really believe allowing the universities to recruit faculty and giving them a pot of money to try to recruit some of the best folks in the country. I think it's really, really important. I think it's been used. I think it's been used very well. I think some of these places have been able to attract some good folks. And look, at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can do to pay somebody to come, right? But when we're sitting on a massive surplus, I mean, honestly, I'm cutting all these taxes. We don't have income tax. We just got rid of our business rent tax. We've taken all these sales tax holidays and made them permanent. So disaster relief, now this storm looks like it's going to have, maybe some tangential impacts, but it's really turning east. And who knows, we're not out of hurricane season yet. So if you do need those hurricane supplies, those are tax-free. We've made permanent our back-to-school sales tax holiday. We've done all these different things. Baby items, totally tax-free now in the state of Florida. I didn't actually enact that till my youngest got out of diapers. I could have saved myself a lot of money had I done that a few years earlier. So we do that. And so we're like, man, and yet we have big surplus. Our rainy day fund, so when I became governor to now, we've more than tripled the state's rainy day fund. And that is, so we're now at the point where constitutionally we're not allowed to put any more into the rainy day fund. So you have a maxed out rainy day fund, then you have a lot of other surplus revenue, general revenue, trust fund revenue, all this other stuff, that's there. And we've had, and honestly, we had such a big one a few years ago. We did more tax cuts. We did the road projects and accelerated those. You guys will see some of that if you're on 75 around Ocala where it gets bottlenecked. We accelerated. That's going to be done 10 years ahead of schedule. It wasn't supposed to be even started till the 2030s. It's like, do people want to sit in traffic for another 15 years? So they're working on that, and they're accelerating. And we put billions of dollars. So we're happy to do that. But the point of it is just, we're in great shape fiscally. I've never been an advocate of just spending money to spend, but if we have an opportunity to empower our universities with an ability to continue to attract really good people, I think that's really positive. So we did that for a couple years. We didn't really get the support on that in this most recent session, but I'm hoping next year that they're able to do that. And so some of the people in this room may have something to say about that as you talk to the folks that are around there. So I'm excited. I'm thankful for everyone's hard work. We're going to hear from some of our speakers. And so as I mentioned before, Dr. Donald Landry is the new interim president at the University of Florida. He was the dean of the medical school at Columbia for, I think, 20 years. He was the physician-in-chief at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, which is a major hospital. And if you look at what happened under his tenure, I mean, massive increase in NIH grants, massive increase in ranking, everything. So he produced really good results, but just as somebody leading all this. But then in his own career, some of the things that he's been able to do, I don't know, he's got patents, he's got all this stuff. I mean, really significant. And he's even been recognized by President George W. Bush during that era for all that he's done. So I think we're really fortunate to be able to have somebody of his caliber here, and it's my honor to invite him up to be able to say a few words.
Governor DeSantis, it's an honor to have you here. It's always an honor to have you at the University of Florida. Chancellor Rodriguez, good to see you again, and thank you so much for joining us. To my fellow State University System presidents, welcome. It's an honor to have you here. It's a deep honor to be counted among you. So, I'm new to this job. It's something like 28 days, 12 hours, and a few minutes, but who's counting? The point is to say that I've contributed nothing to what I'm about to talk to you about, whether it's in the state, whether it's in my university. But then, again, I'm unfettered by the requirements for modesty, so I can, with a very full-throated effort, say that this state is nothing less than extraordinary. It's excelled beyond imagination under this governor. And it's and to come to Florida, and actually to come to its flagship university, is an opportunity beyond imagination. Now, you've heard that the state has done very well, 10th year in a row, ranking #1 among institutions of higher education. Phenomenal record. The last 6 years have been extraordinary years, certainly extraordinary years at the University of Florida. As you've heard also, these have been fraught times. They've been fraught for a while. Boy, it seems like a crescendo between COVID and then post-October 7th, and then the insanity of the last year. It's been difficult across the country, but not really in Florida. And that's because Florida has had the right compass, moral, ethical, practical. And with that compass, comes a perspective, truth in academics, excellence in research and scholarship, only advancement and the most positive student outcomes. And if you have these objectives, you can get results that are beyond imagination. And that's what has been achieved here. I need to pause for a moment and acknowledge a board of trustees that has helped my institution so enormously, incredible talent, and a force of nature in Maury Husseini. We have a good number of the deans of our colleges, myriad colleges, reflecting so many of the disciplines of human intellectual endeavor, completely as befits a land-grant institution. We seek to serve the people of this state in all of their interests and all of their capacities. If you think about what has been accomplished at our university, you've heard about Hamilton. Hamilton is amazing. 48 faculty of the top quality, the highest quality, recruited in less than a 3-year period. We're moving up over the next couple of years to reach 70 or so. It's not a worship of numbers, but it's just a glimpse of the magnitude of investment by the state, investment by the institution, in order to do something exceptional, something that will be a beacon to the nation. Others have tried it, and it's actually failed and involuted. One could say strangled in the cradle. Okay? It's not going to happen here. And it's not going to happen here because there is the backing of the governor, the backing of the legislature. Our universities are not in this fight alone. Okay. Now, AI. AI was just an idea, vague idea, back in 2013 when the University of Florida began an initiative. But it really gained power in 2020 when we got our first hypergator from NVIDIA. And we haven't looked back. Things have gone so well, 100 faculty, enormous numbers of grants. Okay. $800 million in grants over this period of time are attributable to AI entering the research and development process. Okay. An incredible advantage, and one that we have shared with the state, and we are now leading the nation. And we hope that that leadership is recognized very shortly at the highest levels in Washington. It's said that the path to excellence is never-ending, and in that sense, it's more of a death march. But it's not a death march. It's actually, you're supposed to laugh at this point. It's actually, this is a poster I saw once. It's exhilarating. The last 28 days, seeing what has been accomplished, makes me think that if I could survive 28 years, I would spend all of them here working day and night to accomplish more of what has been accomplished before. In terms of detail, the University of Florida, through hard work from the individuals I've acknowledged, made it into the top 10 8 years ago. And we've been moving up, and we've been oscillating around 5 to 7. The fact that we oscillate, the fact that we might have 2 years in a row at 7, is just an indication that this is not solitaire, okay? This is hard work. It's actually hard work at every level in the continuum from 1 to 100. Enormous amounts of work has to be deployed, inspiration, effort, all of that invested. And the objective, again, is not numerology. It's rather that we want to make the lives better for the people in the state and to set an example for the country. And we're trying to do that at our university, as the other presidents are doing at theirs. And in that sense, we are joining together. One example of that joining is Jacksonville. We have a great expansion undergoing and a wonderful collaboration with the University of North Florida. This is what happens when we work together. We will do more of that. And I know that's the governor's desire as well. So let me conclude at this point and just thank all of my people for everything that they have accomplished, and the presidents who have been so welcoming, and the governor who has been so helpful to this institution and to me personally. Thank you.
All right. Good job. Thanks so much. Thank you. Okay, Ray Rodriguez, Chancellor, State University System.
Thank you, Governor. And it's a great day today to be here to celebrate the success of our state university system of Florida. I have to tell you, I really believe I have the best job in higher education, serving as the chancellor for this system. As the governor mentioned, Florida leads the nation in higher education, and we have for a decade now. This year, the SUS of Florida has 2 universities in the top 25, 4 universities in the top 50, and for the first time, 7 universities in the top 100. And that's a system that has a total of 12 institutions. So more than half of our institutions are nationally ranked in the top 100. There's 4 things I think that have contributed to this that I want to share with you, because I'm not sure everyone is aware of these items. And they're important because they speak to the success we've had as a system. The first is our system is focused on academic excellence. One of the key things that has occurred in this state occurred 3 years ago when the legislature passed Senate Bill 266, which removed indoctrinating concepts out of our general education curriculum. It allowed us to take general education and use it for its purpose, which is focusing on academic excellence. Now, that was challenged with multiple lawsuits from faculty members in the ACLU who all contended that they had a right to indoctrinate in general education. And what I want to share with you today is last week, the last of the general education challenges was dismissed. Our focus on academic excellence is why our system is so successful. And we're the only state to have done that. The other states just don't have the stomach to take on the fight to clear this out of their general education curriculum. But Florida has led the way, and now we have shown it can be done. So let's hope others follow. The second, and I'm glad Senator Keith Perry is here today. Stand up, Keith. Senator Perry represented Gainesville when he served in both the State House and State Senate. During his term in the State Senate, he sponsored a bill that's critical to our success. Our campuses here in Florida are rooted in the mission of the pursuit of truth and the promoting of the robust exchange of ideas and perspective. In the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, the National Review published an op-ed on September 15th by Stanley Kurtz that called on states to promote civil discourse by following the example of Florida. The bill Keith Perry sponsored and passed created the Office of Public Policy, which every campus has. And on every campus in fall and spring semester, we're hosting debates on issues of public controversies, both sides, in the same room, same time, having a conversation, a civil conversation. And why is that important? Because our students need to learn that words are not violence, and you don't need a trigger warning to hear something you don't like. We're doing that in Florida, and if anything, the tragedy of what occurred out in Utah with Charlie Kirk demonstrates why this is so important. So thank you for your vision on that, Senator Perry. Thank you to the presidents that have implemented that, and our students are benefiting from that on each of our campuses now. That sets Florida apart. And this last thing I would say is we have been very blessed with support from our legislature and from our governor, who's held the line on tuition and who have appropriated the funds for us to be successful. But I'm going to tell you, our presidents have been great stewards of the money that the legislature has appropriated. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the growth of higher education administration averages 3% a year. In Florida, for the last 5 years, it's been 0.2%. Not 3% a year, 0.2%. Preston Cooper, who is a PhD economist with the American Enterprise Institute, published a study this spring where he looked at the growth of administration in higher education across the country. And he found that the Ivy League, the Ivy Plus, and prominent flagship universities across the country, including the University of Michigan, University of Virginia, UCLA, Berkeley, University of North Carolina, University of Texas, Ohio State University, University of Wisconsin, they have an average of 161 administrators per 1,000 students. 161 per 1,000. Here in Florida, our system has an average of 62 administrators per 1,000 students. These other places have tripled their growth of administration compared to what we're doing in Florida. And why is that? Because you have presidents that are taking the appropriations they're receiving and they're driving it to where it matters, the support of our faculty and our students, so that we have student success. That's why we're ranked #1, the support and the execution of that support. So thank you, presidents, and thank you, legislature and governor. And Governor, we just finished crunching the numbers for fall semester. This is hot off the press. The latest number for percentage of students we have enrolled without a loan is now 79.8%. That number's gone up. I've read nationally at other institutions, if you look at the national average, that number is 35%. So debt is driving higher education outside of Florida, but not here in Florida because of the leadership that we have. So thank you. Today is the day to celebrate.
Okay, our new president of Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Marva Johnson.
Like Dr. Landry, I also don't get to take credit for the outcomes. I am 60 days into my role, but I will profusely show my pride, not just in being a Floridian, but also in being a Rattler. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And as noted, FAMU is Florida's only public historically black college and university. We are the only one of the 12 to carry that mission with us and to be among the highest of honors, the #1 higher ed system in the country is phenomenal. And what it shows more than anything is that our state is committed to making sure that we have collectively invested in every single opportunity to uplift families and to uplift our economy, and to make sure that we're delivering a world-class education that's accessible to all of our citizens. And at FAMU, we're building that momentum to ensure that every student, again, has access to a high-quality education, and that not just we're not getting an education for education's sake. When they leave and walk across that stage, they have a degree that immediately translates to opportunity, that they can walk into a job and be guaranteed that they're going to get more than a working wage. They're going to get a wage that is going to afford them a meaningful lifestyle and an opportunity to contribute to the growth of Florida's economy. And so I am proud to say again that what you've heard already a number of times, that FAMU was the #1 public HBCU for the 7th time running in this year's ratings. That puts us, and I'm just as proud to note that puts us in the top 5% of all public institutions in the country. And when U.S. News evaluates the metrics for these rankings, they look at 17 measurements. And it's wonderful that our state and our leaders under Governor DeSantis and our state legislators have made the investment to make sure that our progress is clear. Our graduation rates continue to improve, including all of our students, especially our Pell Grant recipients. We are affirming our mission to make sure that our students from all backgrounds have access to a high-quality education. Our retention rate rose from 83% in 2016 because of this state's investment in our students and in our campus. That rate is now up to 90%, over 90%. In fact, it was at 92 at the close. And again, these gains reflect the tireless efforts of our faculty and our staff and our administrators who deliver our education opportunities with excellence and caring, but it also shows the partnership with our state leaders like Governor DeSantis and the investment in making sure that we're getting a return that is meaningful for our families. And so we're very proud also to be recognized as one of only 3 institutions here in the state of Florida to be in the top 25 for social mobility. And this ranking really underscores our unique mission, and that's preparing students not just to climb the ladder of success, but to uplift their families and their communities with them when they do so. And that is the power of a FAMU education, and it changes the trajectory of the lives of our students and their families, their communities, and our state. And so our achievements, again, would not be possible without the collaboration and support and investment of our leaders, of Governor DeSantis, of our leaders like Chancellor Rodriguez, our Board of Governors Chair, Brian Lamb, Speaker Perez, and Senate President Albright. And so as we focus on making sure that everybody understands the specific outcomes, because of these investments, we've been able to through our performance-based funding outcomes, we've been able to strengthen our academic advising. We've expanded our career pathways so that we're actually able to get our students into jobs that are meaningful, and we've accelerated our on-time graduation. And again, these are real returns for our investment. So we're very excited about the opportunity to continue to grow and excel, and we would love for you all to think about FAMU always and to continue striking for success.
All right, President of New College in Sarasota, Richard Corcoran.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with obviously an unbelievable, arguably the greatest governor ever in the entire nation. I have 6 children, my wife and I, and so we have kids scattered through the entire state university system. I've lost one to Florida State University. I've lost 2 to University of Florida. In fact, my son just graduated from high school, the most recent Gator, and I would go to him all the time, and I think he was just trying to make me feel good. He's like, "Dad, it's between New College and University of Florida," you know. And then I would always ask him percentages. He's like, 70-30, and you guys were always 70. And then it got to the point where actually I was with the governor, and Florida won the national championship, and I called my wife literally on the way back, and I said, "We're totally toast." I mean, that's over. He's going to Florida. But it's amazing institutions. You have an amazing new president. Just fantastic. I was sitting at the last Board of Governors meeting, which we hosted at New College, and Dr. Landry started speaking, and I was just kind of checked out, and then he started giving a speech, and then he started doing Q&A, and I started texting some of the other board members, like, "What the heck am I doing here? This guy's unbelievable." Just love hearing you speak, Dr. Landry. I think you just have that wonderful Steve Jobs understanding of Steve Jobs used to say that the intersection of liberal arts and technology, that intersection is what makes your heart sing. And that's what every student should be exposed to. And I think you just exemplify it in all your words fantastically. So it's an honor to have you on the president's list. But the point of the presidents, all of us, I think, I'm going to say, every single president, 12 universities, we've all come on board in just the last 3 or 4 years under this governor. And it's a remarkable change and shift, including the policy that he talked about, like 266. And if you don't measure something, people say you don't care. You got to measure it to care. And what has happened is, yes, these rankings matter. It's a measurement. And then you should see that measurement is fair. And I'll say in a second it's not. But what the governor did was, yes, the byproduct is this ranking, but it's the internal stuff. It's that stuff that's being taught. It's swapping out ideology and teaching kids what to think, for teaching kids how to think, and civics education and character education, all of those things, eliminating pernicious ideologies. The first state in the entire union to eradicate DEI was this state. It's still not being done, and everyone now recognizes it's a pernicious ideology that is rooted in detrimental things to our society, to say it nicely. That all started in Florida. When the governor does it, it goes to the other states. When the governor says we're going to have a core curriculum that's going to teach people that intersection between technology and liberal arts, understand the civics and our background, that goes like wildfire to the other 49 states. And if you look at, that's the most important part. Rankings are great, but that's the most important part, and that's happening regardless. And these rankings are amazing, and I want to tell you how amazing they are, because I think President mentioned that there's 19 criteria. The criteria is not fair. The criteria is really, I would say it to U.S. News and World Report, fix your criteria. When you say that retention, and honestly, I just saw him, so I got to give him a shout out. Dr. Cartwright has done a whole document on this if you want to see it, which is fantastic. But if you look at it, 20% of our ranking grades, it's the highest metric of 19. Some are as low as 2%, 1%, 5%. 20% is basically peer review reputation. So why all of a sudden, to Dr. Landry's point, we were 5 at University of Florida and then 7, and now, why? What happened in the last 3 years? This guy has changed the ideology of higher education to say we're teaching how to think, not what to think. And we're being peer reviewed by people who think that's absolutely horrendous. And so you take 20% of our greatest peer review. If you take out the 20%, and I just want to say how wrong it is, things like graduation rate, 16%. Retention rate, we need our kids to come and stay, 5%. They give more criteria to just how much money you pour into the university, whether it be faculty, the overall university, than they do retention and graduation. It just doesn't even make sense. But despite that, you have a governor who's led the university system to the second best in the entire country, and California is only there because of the money and the peer review. And we have 7 universities in the top 100. If you look at the math, the 7 universities that would be in the top 100, all of them would be in the top 50 if you took out this peer reputation. That's how amazing it is. And it doesn't happen with phenomenal leadership. Listen, I've been blessed to actually campaign against him. He kicked my backside, but I've known him from the race. I've known him from being his commissioner of education. I've never seen anybody just charge ahead constantly and constantly say, where's the other front? What's another front that we can go and fix? It's been special, and you're going to, I hate to even say it because we got another wonderful year left, but I don't know what Florida looks like without Governor DeSantis, but I know with Governor DeSantis, we've done more in this state in 8 years than ever before in the history of the state, so thank you.
And I just echo one of the points Richard made. I mean, there's no question. So, now the DEI is on the, it's kind of on the outs, like nationwide, there's been a movement. But when we did that and said, wait a minute, we're not doing that in the state, that was like really cutting edge. We got a lot of blowback for it. And there's no question that Florida, 5 to 7 oscillate, but I think that's almost the entire reason why it went 5 to 7, just because of that, because the people that are reviewing that obviously are proponents of that. And so this stuff all works itself out. And so while we're here and we're proud to be ranked #1, what these presidents are doing, what our Board of Governors, Board of Trustees is also just recognizing that some of this stuff with rankings is fleeting. The job that we're supposed to be doing is to lay a rock-solid foundation for educational excellence. And that doesn't always mean you follow every trend out there. Sometimes you got to cut against the grain like we did on that. But getting that right and that foundation strong, that's what's going to make these universities be powerhouses 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now. And so sometimes this stuff can be fleeting. You don't want to try to be something you're not just to try to chase a little bit higher peer review ranking. That would not ultimately be counterproductive. Maybe in the short term, you'd see a superficial benefit, but you wouldn't be doing what really needs to be done. So just what we're doing is making sure that these institutions have meaning, that they're pursuing truth, and we've done a good job of, but we want to continue to do more going forward. And then I'd also just like to thank the folks that are involved in this. I mean, obviously, we've thanked the universities and the presidents that have been here, and that's where the rubber meets the road. That's really important. But we have a system where we have people that serve on our Board of Governors for the university system, raise the chancellor, but the people that are on there are volunteers. The people that are on our boards of trustees, including here at the University of Florida, are volunteers. Chairman of the board here, Maury Husseini, puts in a lot of time on this, just like all these other board members put in a lot of time. And if you look across the boards that we have here at UF, the other universities, the Board of Governors, we've got some of the most successful, accomplished people in Florida that are willing to serve in these roles. And for really, they're not getting a paycheck. A lot of them don't need a paycheck, but like they're not getting that. They're just putting a lot of time in. And I think when you're somebody that's done great and you've got a lot of irons in the fire in your life, you're very successful. The most significant resource you have is time, and how you choose to apportion your time. And we've got a lot of people that have apportioned a lot of time, Maury on down here at Florida. I always see the folks, Peter Collins, who's the FSU chairman, always in Tallahassee doing stuff. I know Will Weatherford at USF puts in a lot of time. All these guys around the state do a really, really good job. And so that's volunteer. That's them just wanting to make these universities better and the state better. And so we appreciate what they've done to be able to do all that. And so I'm excited, but I'm less excited about crowing about #1 than I am about what this means for the future. And I think we've got a lot of momentum, particularly here at University of Florida. So I'm happy to take a few questions in a second, but I'll just say, for those of you who are going to be in Gainesville on Saturday, say hi to Arch Manning for me. We'll see how it goes. Got any questions? Yes, ma'am. Yep. Well, I like to see people that share the philosophy of what we're trying to do, and understanding, our vision for what a university should be, which, by the way, when you're talking about state universities, yeah, the tuition's so low because we support it at the state level, and we're happy to do that. And they raise money too, but these universities must serve the best interests of the state of Florida. And those interests and those policies are determined through our electoral process. And so, when I was running, particularly for re-election, I was very clear on what I thought of, the trend towards, ideology and wokeness. I said, no, Florida State where woke goes to die. So everyone knew where I stood on that. We went to the voters, and we obviously won very significantly. So just understanding our vision and being willing to implement that vision, which honestly, the vast, vast majority of people, I mean, when our universities were making sure that the Hamas stuff wasn't intruding, or that there weren't the riots or any of the disturbances, that's like 90% of the public doesn't want to see that stuff on college campuses. I mean, it isn't like, we're just kind of doing this willy-nilly. Most people understand focusing on the things that really matter. And look, some of it is, there are certain things you should be learning at university that, like, James Madison was studying when he was at Princeton back in the 1700s. But then there's other things, and Dr. Landry mentioned, I remember when NVIDIA gave the supercomputer. Like, NVIDIA is a lot more wealthy of a company today than it was when they gave it. They were successful, but they've done. So you now have, what irons are in the fire in terms of artificial intelligence. And you hear different views on, some people say it's going to, be the end-all be-all. Some people say it's more of a bubble. Some people say this. But one of the things I think we just have to be mindful of is the ability to make sure that the education programs, and some of that will be primary and secondary, some will be state colleges, some of it will be here at universities, that we're nimble enough to be relevant to some of those changes. I was talking to someone that's pretty knowledgeable, and I was like, this AI, is because the equity market has been fueled by this, right? And a lot of people say when it goes up that much, if they're not monetizing it, could come back down. And basically he made the point, he's like, listen, how significant AI is going to be is up for debate. It does do things, but then it requires more work from humans and all this stuff. So we'll see how that shakes out. But when you have a lot of attention and resources going into R&D and things like that, there could be something that comes out of AI that really isn't what anyone's thinking about that could end up being revolutionary. So we need to just be mindful of that, and we need to make sure that we're doing it. But I think the folks that we have on the Board of Governors now, so Brian Lamb has done a great job as the chairman, of the board. I don't know if he's staying on to do chairman again, but obviously I've been supportive of him. We'll be supportive of him going forward in any of his endeavors. And then we've got a lot of folks on both the BOG and on our state university boards, that have done a really good job. And so we're fortunate. We've got a lot of talent to draw from in Florida, and some of the folks are people like Brian, who grew up in Gadsden County, where probably 90% of Floridians don't even know where Gadsden County is, right by Tallahassee. He grew up there, and now he's higher up at J.P. Morgan in New York City, and he comes back down and does this because he cares about his home state. We've got other folks who born and raised here, work here, live here, who went to these universities, now are being a part of it, and that's great too. But then we've also brought people in from other states, and some in the legislature didn't like it, but we brought subject matter experts. So like New College, Richard has people. We brought the dean of Hillsdale College, Matt Spalding. So the dean of Hillsdale, which they have a good relationship with, is on the board for Richard at New College. We've got some of the people that led the fight against some of the indoctrination on the board at New College. And so it's really been, I think, an interesting mix in terms of how this has all worked out. Yes, ma'am. What is that? Okay. Oh, cool. Okay. Okay. So I think most people know when you're talking about interior enforcement of immigration, and we see it, there's just a lot of bureaucracy that gets attached to that and it's federal when the administration wants to do that. So, and we have a good example, like in Florida, I put boats out to help the Coast Guard when Biden was president, because these boats were coming into Florida. And if you stop the boat on the sea, they go right back to Haiti or wherever. There's no process. If they get to shore, then all of a sudden there's this like big process. Biden would send them around to different parts. So there's that process that's involved. And so if you have somebody that's here illegally, even people that have a final order of removal, there's still a process involved. So how do you do that? So we made the suggestion to the president when he came down in the summer. We have judge advocates in our National Guard. They can be trained as immigration judges, and they can help process this along. And so that had to go through a lot of bureaucratic back and forth with the Department of Justice and some other things. But I think they now have a pathway where you can do that. And so we would be willing to provide. Now, I also know that there was some in DOJ that just wanted them to be drawn from purely civilian rather than the uniformed services. But whatever, we want to be supportive and we want to be able to help it. And the thing is it's like, look, if you have a right to be here, then you have a right to be here, right? I mean, like, but if you don't, are we going to do like an O.J. Simpson trial just to somebody who's here illegally? I mean, like, we got to have a way to make these determinations quickly and then have the law be enforced very swiftly as a result of that. Incidentally, you know, because I've been around the block enough to know, anything we do, as soon as I roll out of bed in the morning, someone sues us on something. Like, you know, Ray's talking about all this stuff, right? And there's certain courts that if we're in front of, we know we're going to lose no matter what, right? It doesn't matter. And then, but then we know we'll win on appeal most likely, because we actually, when we look to do stuff, you know, we're not just flying off the seat of their pants. We actually think through how do you make it stick, and we understand there's a give and take on some of this stuff. And so that typically happens. We could lose in district court, win on appeal. That sometimes at the state level it goes all the way to the Florida Supreme Court. I think our record there is very strong overall. Very strong on the 11th Circuit too. So on the Alligator Alcatraz, they sued, and we had a judge, we knew we were going to lose, and the judge said that the state couldn't do that even though it's a state airport. You know, the feds aren't involved in running it. They just come take them and then send them back to their home country. That you needed to do an environmental impact statement because, you know, it's basically a federal function. That's not what the law says. So we went to the 11th Circuit. The 11th Circuit not only said no, we're not going to let that district judge's ruling take effect. We're actually going to take the case away from her until we finish this appeal. So that appeal will take longer, but they made the extraordinary step of removing the case from her in the interim because they knew what was going on. It wasn't about what the law was. It was about doing whatever they can to throw sand in the gears. So we won that. Remember, the media was giddy when she issued that ruling. And I said, it's operational. It's going to continue to be operational. And that's exactly what happened. And so we're now doing that. We just had DHS come to Tallahassee on Friday, bringing tens of millions of dollars in reimbursement. Remember, I said our operations to assist the Trump administration are going to be reimbursed by them. They're telling us that. I believe it. And so you're already seeing those reimbursements happening. So sometimes I'll hear, oh, well, you have highway patrol or this. How much money is that costing? Well, the reality is whatever we're doing, we're getting reimbursed for. So that the net cost to the Florida taxpayer won't be anything. But what is the cost to Floridians by allowing illegal immigration to continue? There's costs on the state, on the communities, health care, medical, hospitals, education, law enforcement, all that stuff. They don't talk about those costs. They just assume anything you're doing to alleviate those costs, they count that cost. They don't like to count the others. So I think on all these, we understand how the game's played. We understand that there's favorable forums that they go to. But at the end of the day, we've been remarkably successful in getting things right-sized on appeal. And on this one, I think we're totally good. So on the judge advocates, you know, we're there. We got people that want to be helpful. It's not just up to us, though. It's really a federal. They train. They do a lot of different things to kind of get people up to speed on that. But you know, what I think a lot of people don't know, immigration, quote, judges they're not Article III judges. They're executive branch employees. So they are employed by, it used to be the Justice Department. I think it probably still is, but when DHS shifted, INS went in there. So maybe it's technically DHS, but it's one of the civilian agencies, and they're lawyers that are trained in immigration law. So you don't have to have been appointed to a federal court to adjudicate this stuff. And thank God you don't have to do that. Imagine the backlog if we had to go into federal judges. So these are executive branch employees. They serve this function. This process has been in place. I think some of it's screwy. I mean, just think about it. How does it make sense that you can have a president from 2021 to January 2025 open the border, let people in, 10 million people, whatever, fly them all around the country, Then you have the next president that said, you know, the American public doesn't like that. I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to fix it. And that president comes in, and to fix it, it's like you got to go through every lawsuit every single day. And so it's a one-way ratchet. They can let in, and then they want to make it so that it's hard to repatriate. And if that happens, then you can have that border be secure, which, you know, they've done a good job of doing, but it's just going to continue to be an issue. So I think it's important that the laws are enforced. And I can tell you in Florida, I mean, they'll do these, you know, like Grady Judd, the sheriff in Polk County, great guy. He does these big busts of these child predators, and like a third of them are illegal aliens. It's like, why would we want that to be happening, you know, in our communities? And so there's a lot of issues here, but we've been leading on it, and we want to make sure that the state upholds the rule of law and is safe for everybody. So yeah, so basically, the initial training was not very quick. Let's just put it that way. And our position was like, listen, you know, we got to get going. So they have streamlined the training. I don't know exactly how long, whether that number's right, but I do know it's weeks and not months. And people are going to have an opportunity to go through the pipeline and get smart on this stuff, and then go from there. Yes, sir. Well, Blaise Ngoli is a very hard-charging chief financial officer. You guys, the taxpayers, you should be thankful that he's there. He's really doing a good job. And, you know, the reality is just, and this is not unique to Alachua County, although I will say, you know, as local governments go, you know, yours is a little interesting compared. It is what it is, you know. It's just you can kind of tell what the dynamics of play. But, you know, we've just in a situation where, because we've seen an increase in property values, an increase in people moving to Florida, which I am not like asking for, because like honestly, like we've got a lot of people. And so I'm not like saying please move, because you know, like, you know, you got to kind of get sea legs on some of this stuff. But the reality is just, especially during COVID, you know, we were the refuge, right? And so people chose to do that. So people had homes that maybe they bought in 2010 for like $300,000 that are now being appraised at $800,000. Okay, well, they didn't sell it for $800,000, but they're being told it's worth so much more. So even if you have a homestead protection, you're going up 3% a year, like clockwork. And then, heaven forbid, I mean, just think like, you know, if you had somebody that gets recruited to come to the university from another part of the state, they sell a home they want to buy, well, that tax base is going to be a lot higher. So then you end up having to pay property tax at this much higher valuation, and that's pinching a lot of people, which is a problem. And so I'm somebody that has been, you know, very clear. I don't want people to be driven out of their house because of property taxes. It's ridiculous that would be happening in this state. So our vision's very simple. You know, the local governments, we don't get any revenue from property tax. We don't administer property tax. It's a local function. We need to deal with it through a ballot initiative, which we are working on, and we'll put on the ballot in 26. So you'll have an opportunity to vote. You know, but my vision is, you know, if a local government, you know, wants to tax the commercial stuff, they want to tax snowbird properties, Airbnbs, whatever, you know, that's one thing. But your personal residence, you know, as a homesteaded Floridian, you know, we want you to own that tax-free. And I think that'd be tremendous if we were able to do that. Now, to get there, people are going to say, well, if you now what some people are saying is saying, like, you know, if you eliminated everything on everything, like, look, if I were starting society from scratch, I would not tax property. I would tax consumption, but that we're not there. So we got to work with what we do. How do we get Floridians, you know, this protection and this relief? And so you look at the local governments. What has been fueling the increased spending has been the rising receipts. Now, some places raise the millage. Some places just leave the millage alone. But the problem with leaving it alone is people are paying more as a result of that because they're valuing it higher. It's like an unrealized gain. You know, it's one thing if like I buy something at the store and you pay sales tax, okay, then I buy the same thing 2 months from now, and if the price of that good went up, then maybe I have to pay a little higher. But these aren't transactions. They're just telling you your property's worth so much more. And what goes up does go down, by the way. There are a lot of people that had high valuations in Florida in 2007. Then you fast forward a couple years, 2010, those valuations weren't as good. And so these things just happen. But one of the things I think we've seen is a big explosion in spending at the local level. And I'm all for saying, you know, schools, public safety, fire, police, you know, the water management stuff. I mean, the core things we support. But you can do that without having a 60% in, like Broward County down in South Florida, no population increase in the last 5 years. Their budget's gone up 60%. So the question would be is if they had the same budget level that they had before, would the sky fall? I don't think the sky would fall at all, but that would be able to give you this massive relief. So I think what Blaze is doing is he's showing that, that this can be done, that the amount that you're paying to local government is not 100% being used for the things that we all care about and talk about. There's other things that they're spending the money on, and especially on some of the salaries and the staff for some of the people that work in these bureaucracies. I mean, some of the county administrators, you know, are making like $280,000, $300,000. You know, I don't know. I mean, like, it is what it is. So is that would you want to pay property tax to fund that, or would you rather dial that back and you get a tax cut? I mean, like, it's just, we can make these arguments, right? But I think what Blaze is doing is he's really been leading the charge on Doge. Now, we're Doging, by the way, we're Doging state stuff too. We're Doging the universities, and we're gonna have a report on that probably, you know, sometime this fall. We've Doge state agencies. We're trying to use things like artificial intelligence to add to our review, because we review all this stuff anyways, but we're adding. So we're going to talk more about some of those findings as well. So it's not just local governments. And so sometimes people say, oh, well, you know, the state, why do you care about local? You guys should. Well, first of all, the state of Florida, as I mentioned, our rainy day fund's maxed out. We have no income tax. We've cut taxes by $8 billion since I've been governor. We have massive budget reserves. We have a AAA credit rating. But get this, even with supporting the universities, even with supporting infrastructure, Everglades restoration, all the things we're doing, the current year budget is spending less than the year before, and that year before spent less than the year before that. How many other states are doing that 3 years in a row? Not a lot. So when they try to act like you should be, you know, focused just on, like, we are looking at the agencies 100%, because as good as we've done, we can always do better, and we want to do better. But, like, let's just be clear here. You look at the last 3 years. Now, we did have an increase in the non-budgeted stuff during COVID, because you know what? When people were sick, I set up clinics for monoclonal antibodies for people. And I'm glad I did that, because that saved a lot of people's lives. Costs money. We got reimbursed from the feds for it, but it costs money to do. And I'm happy to have done that. Happy to have helped, you know, expand medical staff at some of our hospitals when we would have some of the high occupancy periods. They were in short supply. Unfortunately, you know, it costs money to. So I was happy to do that. But man, I don't know if there's any other place around that's done that. So Blaze is keying in on something that's really important. Now, I haven't reviewed the findings in Gainesville specifically, so I don't want to, you know, pretend like I'm as up. But I know we are going to have some more announcements that are going to really unveil even more significant findings from what these Doge teams have done. And, you know, we have a great opportunity as well. We're probably the only, when you talk about the property tax, we're probably the only state in the country that could pull it off. Why? Because we have more revenue goes to local governments from non-homesteaded residential properties than our homesteaded residential property. Why? Because you have snowbirds. You've got wealthy people that stay here three months of the year. I'd rather Floridians pay less and they pay the tax. I mean, like, why would we not want to look out for our own? You know, these Airbnbs, It's like some people, like some whole neighborhoods are like Airbnbs or some of these. Look, it's hard to kind of, I know there's like, it's a tricky thing because there's some want to regulate at the state level, some want local, whatever. But, if you did a property tax situation where, if you actually live in your home, you're not paying tax and the Airbnbs are paying tax, isn't that going to help put the thumb on the scale for traditional home ownership without having to have a big regulatory morass or bureaucracy? Yeah, it will align incentives, I think, better. So I think a lot of Floridians are like, people can do what they want. If someone wants to buy homes and invest, like that's fine, but it's like, we have entire neighborhoods that are doing this. How does that affect prices for young families that want to afford a home? I mean, to me, it's like, elderly have to be able to stay in their homes. If they're being driven out because of the high taxes and other costs. I mean, let's just be clear. This is the worst period of inflation since COVID, since the 1970s. Grocery prices, all the things that have impacted this. The one thing we control is taxes, though, and so we can do something about it. But I want elderly to be able on fixed income. But I also want young people to be able to have a chance here. And if somebody is like, and maybe the homes will become more affordable as the market changes, because there are changes afoot, I think. But they get in, if they're able to, not have to pay $2,500 or $3,000 a year in taxes just to live, isn't that going to be good for them and their ability to raise a family? Yeah, I think it would be. So those are the people that I really want to help in all this. Those are the people that we should be fighting for, and that's what we're going to be looking to do. So stay tuned on the Doge. We've got a lot more findings that are going to come out. We've had a lot of people that have been working very hard on this, and it's not limited to local governments. We will have findings for state agencies, and we will have findings for universities as well. Yes. So the question is on, because the rankings have been high, what about out-of-state students? Well, we have 90% of our undergrads are Florida residents, and we're gonna keep it that way. I mean, I think that we want to attract other students from other states who are very strong academically, but what I don't want is to just kind of miss the mission. Like the mission of these universities is to give the people that are here and raising their families an ability to send their kids to a top flight university. And so I think it's good that we have that. I know there's discussion about, can you tweak it here or there? All I could say is the out-of-state students, it's very difficult to get in here as an out-of-state student, certainly for Florida, because I've looked at those numbers. But even with out-of-state tuition, it's still very cheap. I mean, like, and I've said, like, all I care about is the in-state tuition for Florida residents. Like, if a university does want to charge more for out-of-state, that's separate because I'm protecting our people. But even with that, it's less, much less than private universities, not even close. So I think it's a good bargain for that, and I think we're able to attract some really, really good students. But I don't anticipate us seeing a radically different apportionment of the student body. I think we're going to have, roughly 90% are going to be Florida residents. That may change a little bit in the graduate programs, but certainly for this, I think is appropriate. And I think a lot of people have benefited. And what's happened is, it used to be if you were like a really top performer here at UF, where would you go? You'd go to like Atlanta or Charlotte or some of these places. Now, New York. Now, I mean, Miami, West Palm, Orlando, I mean, there's more, Tampa, there's a lot more opportunity, I think, in Florida because of how our economy has come around. Yes, tourism, we've obviously had a big agriculture component, and this university's been a part of that industry for a long time. But if you look at what financial services, if you look at like defense, space, all these different things that have really blossomed in Florida, these students have a great opportunity ahead of them. And as there's more dynamism in the economy and more things are happening, we think that that's going to be something that our universities are going to be well equipped to kind of guide the students to where they need to be. Yes?
I'm sure you're aware of recent social media posts by our school board members, particularly our vice chair calling Charlie Kirk an uneducated white boy. Do you have anything to say to school board members who make these kinds of posts?
So what I will say is we have a education commissioner that is a pit bull, and his name is Stasi Kamoutsis. And and all I can tell the folks on the Alachua School Board is, you know, they are in Stasi, they have Stasi's attention. And it's not just on this, which is deplorable. What they've done to these students, the teacher, and this is wrong. And so there's going to be consequences for all of this. He is very quick to act. You know, I'll just be like, you know, getting ready. I'll be like going out the door, jumping in the car. I just check. I see he sent out a nastygram to another school day. I'm like, yes, all right, go ahead. So he is very much a bulldog on this stuff. And look, it's sad to say because, you know, here we are with such an esteemed university, but that school district has not covered itself in glory. I think that they've just, it's like they're in a different world. Like, you know, you're a school board, but you're in the state of Florida, okay? You know, you're not a school board in Oakland or Berkeley, okay? So, you know, we have standards. We have certain things and rules and regulations that you have to abide by. I know that one teacher is going to be held accountable, and I know that there's going to be more, you know, that happens. And here's the thing on the Charlie Kirk, because, well, one, I mean, Charlie, when he was 18, was beating the bushes in Florida. I mean, I met him when he was 18, and he was in Florida a lot because we had a lot of people here that were generous to support his initiatives, and he even lived here for a time. And I think he went to Arizona because he met his wife, but he was in Sarasota for a time. So I got to know him. Yeah, I got to know him pretty well. But he really relished going to these college campuses and trying to bring ideas to those campuses that may not necessarily get a fair hearing usually, and that's certainly true in many parts of the country. And so he was doing that, and he did it with a lot of vigor and a lot of passion. He really believed in what he was doing. And shouldn't we want these students to be, I mean, he would take questions from all of the hostile students, and then he would answer, and they'd go back and forth. What I found in just what, because, you know, he's honestly a lot more popular now because people are watching his clips since this happened. And what I found is, you know, the students that would challenge him, you know, had a superficial understanding. They were just parroting talking points. Whatever was kind of, you know, cool to say amongst a little clique, the minute they had their assumptions challenged, they melted. And so what Charlie was doing was really kind of exposing why it's important that we have robust debate. You need to graduate from our universities where your assumptions have been challenged. And if it's all just kind of, you know, party line, you know, trying to indoctrinate a certain worldview, and you never have anyone push back on that, you're not going to be well suited to get out, you know, in this, unless you're in a cocoon for the rest of your life. And there are some areas where you may be able to do that, but that's not for most people. So he really showed that, and you didn't have to agree with them, okay? But I mean, a lot of Americans do, right? It isn't like he's representing like 1%. I mean, there's tens of millions of people in this country, you know, that agree with his overall philosophy. And so to see somebody go through, I mean, say they don't like him, they don't like his views, set up on top of a building and assassinate him, that is taking the intellectual intolerance to a level that we have not seen. And I think it really crossed a very serious line in this society. I think that's part of the reason why it's become, it really got so much traction with the public. And as I said, there's people watching his videos now who probably didn't even know who he was prior to this happening. And I think it's because people are just horrified at the idea that, you know, you're out there, you're answering questions, you're having good faith debate, and someone's response to that is not even to just shout you down, not even to just create a melee so that the event gets canceled, to actually assassinate you. That was a dark day for this country. Now, in the aftermath of that, it was really troubling to see people, like, because, you know, look, if Antifa is celebrating his assassination, you expect that from like the very far left. But to have teachers revel in this across the country, to have nurses revel in this, to have people that are, you know, in major arteries of our society expressing glee that he was, that was really a gut punch. That's saying we've got some problems. And so some people say, well, you don't have to like Charlie Kirk, free speech. Yeah, you don't have to. Are you allowed under the are you going to get put in jail because you celebrated his assassination? No, you're not going to get put in jail on the First Amendment. But can we as a society and me as a governor look and say, you know what, I've got young kids. Do I want a teacher in the classroom whose response to that is to glorify it and celebrate it? No, I don't want that person teaching our kids. And we have a right to make that clear. I don't want to have somebody like, you know, if I have a family member that goes into the hospital and to have a nurse that thought that, or a doctor that thought it was good that this young man with 2 young kids, 31 was assassinated, there's something wrong. And so it's taking political disagreements and really creating a toxic atmosphere that you would revel in that. No one's saying you got to celebrate. If you didn't agree with them, you don't have to be something you're not. But when that stuff comes out and the way it came out in like just normal segments of American society, that was disappointing. And especially given like, you know, he was an activist, he was a young guy. To have that type of kind of hatred that you would celebrate it, that was that. So the teachers, these people there, all I can say is, you know, Stasi is on the case. And I'd imagine you're going to see some action in at least some of those incidents. All right, guys, thanks so much. Take care.